is up, guys? This is Bradley Abbott with Butter Spice and Why Don't You Have a Slice? Today's episode is the Macro Conundrum Part 2. I'm going to keep the focus on protein, carbohydrates and fats together and myth bust some things you may or may not know about. Okay, so I'm going to start off by telling you about mainly the protein and the carbs and explaining a little bit about what the hunter-gatherer diet used to be, the hunter-gatherer diet. Okay, so today it's mainly about protein, carbohydrates and fats, but not necessarily about the political side of things, just a few facts here and there, and taking some from the history of this, okay? So, Dr. Donald Lehman, who is the director of research, or he's retired now, he was the director of research at the Egg Nutrition Center, and he was also the chief science officer in Quana. He was speakers at the bureaus of the National Dairy Council and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And he said this: the hunter-gatherer diet was 60% meat and 40% plants, and it involved meats, reptiles, fish, shellfish, birds, eggs, roots, algae, wild berries and fruits, nuts and seeds. That's what the hunter-gatherer diet was. That's where originally it is 60% meat. It was very high in protein. Compare this to the contemporary agriculture, which is 40% animal to 60% plant, and this diet includes cereal grains, legumes, sugar, plant oils, alcohol and dairy. Now, just before I move forward, what do you think? I want you to take a moment here and think about what sounds better to you. What generally sounds healthier there? It's going to be what, the hunter-gatherer diet, right? It seems more natural. That's because it is. I mean, you have 60% meat and 40% plant, which includes natural things. Algae, wild berries, fruits, nuts and seeds, compared to man-made grains. I take a mention here that the grains that we have today are not the grains that are talked about in old texts, or not even in biblical times. They're not the same stuff. The wheat and the bread that's manufactured today has been genetically engineered to withstand long growing periods. And when you hybridize wheat like that, you always give up something to gain something. So in the process of hybridization for this wheat and these crops that we have, to gain longer growing seasons, the protein content in the wheat actually went down. It actually went down. So think about that for a moment, okay? And it's like the evolution of human metabolism. This is how it affects. Dr. Donald Lehman also goes to state that the human genome reflects thousands of years of evolution to survive in the environment. Now, okay, so the protein, for example, the extensive mechanisms to digest. It takes a lot to digest protein, however, and metabolize and eliminate it. However, high satiety rates, which is, think of satiety as being satisfying your hunger. You know, it's being fuller for longer. That's what protein does. It helps you feel fuller for longer to avoid excess intake. Now, fat, on the other hand, has unlimited energy storage for survival. It's a passive nutrient. It's unlimited energy storage. So just think about that when you think about fat as a whole. Fat ain't a bad thing. We've done this for survival. It is unlimited energy storage. Carbohydrates, however, are on the low end of our evolutionary scale. Low evolutionary exposure. They're highly toxic with a rapid clearance. Insulin is the only safety mechanism we have against carbohydrates. It's the only one we have. It's the only hormone. So just think about it. When you're comparing carbohydrates to fats to proteins, just think about that for a moment. When you're trying to wrap your head around the health benefits and think about the evolution of things that I've just talked about here, and Dr. Donald Lehman says. Another thing I would like to add to protein before we move forward is that one of the people involved in the naturopathic world was actually a nutritional pharmacist called Ben Fuse. And he stated that you crave sugar when you are protein deficient. You crave sugar when you are protein deficient. Okay, just think about that. Just think about that for a moment. Now, Dr. Don Lehman also goes to state that the benefits of a high-protein, reduced-carb diet is increased weight loss, protection of skeletal muscle, reduces body fat percentage, increases thermogenesis, which is the energy used to produce heat in your body, increases satiety, which is your fullness for longer, being satisfied for longer, enhances glycemic regulation, which means you'll be able to regulate your blood sugar better. That's what it means. Okay, I will go back to the protection of the skeletal muscle a bit more, because in the Journal of Sports Sciences back in 2004, okay, volume 22, it was on protein and amino acids for athletes. It also concluded that the excess protein could increase calcium secretion in your urine, which is why if you are an athlete, it is important that you be careful of your bone and joints, because it does. But the more meat you eat, it is good for you. But just be careful. I'd be supplementing with calcium if you are eating meat, especially if you are working out, because you need the meat, but you also need other nutrition as well to back that up. That's how you balance that out, guys. Okay? So, moving forward. Now, if you think about who has the higher protein needs, okay, an American footballer, a female runner, or a 68-year-old couple, they're all the same. The protein needs are the same. Each must replace 250 grams of protein every day. 250 grams of protein. It's not just the amount we consume. Okay, everyone. It's the amount that we have in our bodies that we use. That's what it is. So, amino acids as metabolic signals, if you think about this, okay, I won't go too much into science. It's good for vascular health, like nitric oxide, and especially it's good for gut hormones like GLP-1. Also, the more important one is leucine for mTOR. All of you guys and gals who are gym goers will know about leucine, because the chances are you would have supplemented with it, or at least heard about it while you're eating like your eggs and your meat and your fish and stuff. Okay? Now, to have muscle turnover, you have to consume 30 grams of protein per meal. And I don't mean that 30 grams you have to consume 30 grams of leucine per meal. Okay? In order to have proper mTOR, muscle turnover. Okay? And protein synthesis. You have to have 30 grams there. Okay? You have to have 30 grams of protein. Not 30 grams of leucine, sorry. So, what you really need to be doing, guys, is going online and searching this stuff out, which meat has the higher leucine contents. I will tell you this, I don't know the exact number, but I do know that chicken has actually less leucine content than does steak or beef. Red meat actually has a higher leucine content. So just think about that when you go in, when you're trying to wrap your head around your protein synthesis and your muscle turnover. Okay, think about that when you have that in the back of your mind when you go into the stores. Okay. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about. Okay, Dr. Donald Lehman continues the story and he talks about if you consume more than 30 grams of carbohydrate, the body has to store it, and the only way it can do that is as fat. Just think about that. Okay, so remember, this isn't just an average doctor, he's a professor. He's a retired professor. In the world of protein, in the world of muscle turnover and protein, Dr. Donald Lehman is far beyond most doctors. You know how everyone has a wheelhouse, everyone is so good at their field better than everyone else. Well, Dr. Joel Wallach in the field of naturopathic medicine and nutrition is his field. Dr. Albert Einstein, God rest his soul, is far beyond anyone else in terms of physics. Decades ahead of his time. And in the world of protein, Dr. Donald Lehman is the man, is the person to go to. And in terms of carbohydrate, because what you realize is the more you go into this, you cross over. They work in synergy. And if you consume more than 30 grams of carbohydrate, remember, to know about protein as much as he does, you also need to know about the other macronutrients as much as he does. So if you consume more than 30 grams of carbohydrate, the body has to store it as fat. It's the only way it can do it. So more than 30 grams of carbohydrate per meal, it stores it as fat. So keep that in mind if you are trying to lose weight or if you're trying to feel better or get better sleep. Keep that in mind, guys, when you're doing this. Okay, so now back to protein. Okay, if say hypothetically, say if you are, I don't know, say if you are going on the creatine needs. Now, all you guys who have used creatine, anyway, those of you who haven't, creatine is part of like the protein family of supplements. Okay, and you need 2 to 3 grams a day. Okay, no less, maybe no more. 2 to 3 grams a day. 2 to 3 grams of creatine a day. You can have it with meals, and it'll help protein turnover, muscle synthesis, and help muscle recovery after a workout. Okay? So the theory behind the creatine is that it may make cells bigger. The protein cells bigger, the muscle cells bigger. That's the theory behind creatine. Okay? Now, Professor Tim Noakes, okay, he's a British professor who's done research worldwide. He says that the health industry pays no attention to food and the food industry pays no attention to health. And I think that is right on the money. What do you think? I think he's right. Because if you think about the guidelines and if you think about all this information out there that's confusing everyone left, right, and center, it's hard to pick which one is right. And the truth is, everyone is individual to themselves. However, there are basic requirements by our human body, and that is protein, fats, and some carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, amino acids, essential fatty acids. They're not all going to be, you've got, but those are the basic requirements. But after that, you go into individualism. But when people throw at you false research, it throws you way off, and you've got to, which is why I did this podcast, guys. It's why I'm doing the series of podcasts. It's why I started doing my podcast in the first place. Because people needed to know, and my goal is here to try and make people less confused, and actually get the message out that there are grey areas, but you don't have to be confused anymore. You follow basic, not guidelines, not a diet. I hate that word diet because everyone is different. And when you throw the word diet around, things tend to go out of whack a little bit. When you throw the word diet around, people will look at you funny sometimes and they'll go, ooh, diet? I don't know. I don't want to give up that stuff. What does that mean? If you throw, depending on who it is, sometimes when you throw the word diet around, people will actually associate that with limiting what they eat. And they automatically associate the word diet with giving up things. Restriction. More rules to follow. And it throws people off, which is why I try and avoid the word diet. What I want to replace that with is actually eating habits or eating behavior, because that way there's no restriction, because eating behavior is specific to you. Your eating habits are yours, no one else's, and it's up to you to change if you really want to, or if you see the importance enough to. Okay, you don't necessarily have to restrict things, which is why I try and avoid the word science. Now, there are books here that I would recommend. The books here that I would recommend are actually, before I recommend these books, because I want to do this at the end so you can be easier for this to be written down for you guys. But in one of my interviews with a good friend of mine who I used to work with, I won't say her name for confidential reasons, but she told me that she had a trainer once, and she was getting trained for a bodybuilding competition. Okay, and because this personal trainer that she had, this personal coach that she had, was literally had something that's worked for him, he tried to put that method on her, and it didn't work for her. It's going back to that individual thing. You're individual to each one of you, okay? And when she started doing her own diet and her own eating pattern, and developing her own eating habits and changing things, she realized that for her in particular was lower fat content, higher protein, and higher carbohydrate. Because she felt bad. Again, she's following the same thing that I've talked about, but she had to change some of it because for her in particular, she felt better that way. The ratios, she had to fix her own carbohydrate, fat, and protein ratios. Okay? Am I making sense? Awesome. Okay? And that's the point. It goes back to individualism, guys. You know, going back to the meat hunter diet, the hunter-gatherer diet, that was a basic. It's changed since then because we've had politics, unnecessary politics sometimes, change the guidelines of how we eat, and that shouldn't have been the case. And the only reason that was the case is because a man named Ansel Keys was even described by his colleagues as a bully, and some of his close friends described him as a bully because he was very outspoken and very charismatic and bullied his way up to the top. Therefore, because of his charisma, he was very believable. And in 1961, okay, he said that he tried to perpetuate the notion that saturated fat was bad for you. It never was. It never was. Okay? And in 1961, in the journal Ansel Keys and Company, in the Journal of Circulation, volume 23, pages 133 to 136, he put it out there, and he tried to promote tried to recommend polyunsaturated oil to fight heart disease, when that's just nonsense. Okay, now that was called the diet heart hypothesis, and this diet heart hypothesis that he tried to perpetuate, and he tried to promote, and he tried to confirm, it was tested. It was actually tested, this hypothesis, many, many times. There were actually a large number of government-funded randomized controlled clinical trials, and altogether some 75,655 men and women in experiments lasting 1 to 12 years. After all of this, after all of it, guess what it found? No effect of saturated fats on cardiovascular mortality or total mortality were found. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. It was not found. That's because it's not true. You imagine doing that for 12 years and testing nearly 80,000 people, and you still can't find anything, and it still got put in the guidelines. Think about that. Okay, I know I've gone on the politics a little bit, but you guys needed to hear that. Okay? My point being is not everything is as black and white as it seems in the guidelines. Okay? So think about that. Okay? Now, you've already heard me talk about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, especially the content about leucine and about creatine, okay, and the amount of carbohydrates you consume. If you contain more than 30 grams of carbohydrates, then the chances are that whoosh, it'll go. Yeah, it'll store it as fat. So just again, keep that in mind, guys, when you're talking about this stuff, when you're trying to go in stores, either food stores or supplement stores, and trying to get the best you possibly can out of everything. Okay? Now, the books that this was actually from Tim Moore, I'm going to recommend to you. Okay? You got to look these up because it'll open your mind up a little bit more, and it'll give you a wider perspective on things. And now this is called, there are 2 books here I want to recommend, so get your pen and paper out. Okay? You got it? Book number 1 is called Bad Science. Okay, just look up Bad Science. It's an old book. Book number 2 is called Bad Pharma. Look those two up. Bad Science. Book number 2, Bad Pharma. Look those up, guys. They're fantastic books. Recommend them read. Again, I also recommend, this, like I'll always, is Epigenetics by Dr. Joel Wallach. The Death of the Theory of Genetic Disease Transmission. That's a fantastic book too. And look out for future recommendation of book, guys. My best I do is trying to help you out and help you get the best knowledge you possibly can and give you the widest perspective possible. Okay? While I try to do that and try to learn that for myself too. We're all trying to learn here, guys. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I enjoyed delivering to you. I enjoy helping you guys out. You know, I don't run ads. The only fee that I do have is that you please share this with people. You know, if you enjoyed it, if you think it will be good for your family or friends or work colleagues or something, please just share this around. I'm here to help you guys out. Okay, and thank you so much again for listening. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Bradley Abbott signing off with Butter Spice, and why don't you have a slice? Peace out.